Once again, good afternoon. Welcome to our event on investing in Georgia's workforce at U.S.-Japan Dialogue. This event is being presented by Sasakawa as part of Sasakawa USA's The Alliance Working in America program in Atlanta, Georgia. It is co-hosted by Sasakawa USA, the Consulate General of Japan in Atlanta, the U.S. Department of State, and the Georgia Institute of Technology's Center for International Business Education and Research, also known as GT CIBER. The event is also supported by TCSG, the Technical College System of Georgia, the Georgia Department of Economic Development, and the Japan-America Society of Georgia. We'll now invite the representatives of our co-organizers to make brief welcome remarks. Our first speaker is Ms. Julie Chung, Director of the Office of Japanese Affairs at the U.S. Department of State.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, and thank you to Consul General Shinozuka and Ambassador Zumwalt for having us and organizing this event at this very beautiful venue today. Before I start, I just want to note our deep sympathies and condolences and thoughts and prayers go to those in Japan, the terrible tragedies of the earthquake, as well as the tsunami, and recent flooding in Kansai as well. There's been really a string of natural disasters. And I want to let everybody know that the people of America stand by our Japanese friends, and we'll do whatever we can to assist. So the administration's strong relationship with Japanese leaders underscores our deep relationship with Japan for many decades. Now, President Trump has met Prime Minister Abe more often than any other world leader. And let that be in Mar-a-Lago, or the golf courses, or Tokyo, or Washington. Those have been very robust discussions on a wide range of issues, very honest, frank, and a good exchange of views. And we also have Vice President Pence, who has also traveled to Japan, as well as Secretary Pompeo with their counterparts. And we've had the U.S.-Japan Economic Dialogue since last year. And we just announced, actually just a few hours ago, that our new Special Representative for North Korea, Steve Biegun, will be traveling to Tokyo next week, on his way to also Seoul and Beijing. So in many levels, we are coordinating and cooperating and making sure we are in line with all of our strategies with Japan. And later this month, we also expect a meeting of our leaders at the UN General Assembly. So as President said, when unveiling our national security strategy, those who share our principles magnify the strength of the United States. Currently, a major area for enhancing our bilateral cooperation is our collaboration in the Indo-Pacific. Japan, more than any other country, in my view, shares our values and our vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific based on transparent, rules-based system that underpins regional prosperity. And this is reflected in the Prime Minister's own Indo-Pacific strategy. Recently, Secretary Pompeo announced $113 million investment, an initiative to invest in digital economy, energy, and infrastructure as a down payment of our longer commitment to the region. So we welcome this strong leadership from Japan as our critical ally as we move forward on a range of Indo-Pacific strategies. It's about working together to have a force multiplying effect as we do this throughout Southeast Asia, South Asia, and beyond. Our alliance and security relationship is strong, and the biggest area where we'll have to work on now is trade and investment. As I've mentioned, we are already coordinating on our DPRK strategy and in the Korean Peninsula. But the Trump administration is really committed to achieving a fair, free, and reciprocal trading relationship with Japan. As our goods trade deficit with Japan has risen to $69 billion, we do have work to do in this area. One area that may help address this challenge is increased investment from Japan in production facilities in the United States. And we know that we see that right here in Georgia and throughout the United States. The President has highlighted the importance of increased Japanese investment. Across all sectors, Japanese affiliated firms employ more than 856,000 people and indirectly support another 1.7 million jobs. We are certainly thankful for that and want to increase that number even more. And investing in the U.S. makes good business sense. The U.S. offers the largest consumer market in the world. The U.S. government supports foreign direct investment, providing investors non-discriminatory, equitable treatment. And it offers a transparent legal system, an advanced transportation network, and a highly productive labor force that we're very proud of, access to capital and other resources. Under President Trump, the U.S. has focused on improving the business environment even further through tax changes and deregulation, both of which aim to improve the ease of doing business and create jobs in the United States. An additional way to attract more investment and make businesses more successful is to ensure American workers have the tools, the knowledge, and the resources needed to compete in the global economy. Workplaces in the U.S. and around the world are right now undergoing profound change. Emerging information, computing technologies, areas of automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, demographics, all these are changing our workforce composition and participation. It's an important focus at the individual, community, and company level is recognition of education and training in middle skills, work tasks, and job functions in STEM areas. To that end, the U.S. supports apprenticeships and workforce development programs that prepare American workers for high-wage manufacturing and technology jobs of the 21st century. By building strong community and educational partnerships, we can apply the lessons from middle skills STEM workforce training programs to address underlying issues related to job markets, emerging technologies, and educational systems. So with our close relations and shared values, the U.S. and Japan are well-suited to cooperate on efforts to prepare our workforces for this changing world. For example, Japanese firms in the U.S. work with local school systems to develop STEM curricula. They partner with community colleges to develop technical training programs that help students and businesses and offer mentoring. And today, I'm looking forward to hearing more and learning from the panelists about other activities that are happening right here in Georgia. We welcome the contributions by both American and Japanese companies to develop this workforce because we need that public-private partnership more than ever. So for almost 60 years, the U.S.-Japan alliance has been the cornerstone of peace, stability, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. It's evolved into an institution in which the U.S. and Japan engage and cooperate on economic, political, security, whatever it is, and people-to-people exchanges. What sometimes gets less attention, but is no less important, is the importance of the U.S.-Japan relationship that's right here in the United States. And that's why I'm so thankful for the Sasakawa Foundation for creating this great series. We work together to promote economic cooperation and prosperity in each other's nations. And these efforts help each other lay the groundwork to work together on addressing global challenges. So whether that be in Tokyo or Washington or Atlanta or San Francisco or Seattle or Osaka, we do this together because improving the workforces in both our countries is one aspect of that overlooked element of our bilateral relationship. Whether by bringing people together in an event like this to address the changing nature of work, promoting entrepreneurship, supporting women's economic empowerment, efforts that allow each individual to develop his or her potential, are the examples of the close and very meaningful partnership that the United States and Japan share. Thank you. I look forward to hearing the rest of the discussion.
Thank you. Next, we will have the Honorable Takashi Shinozuka, the Consul General of Japan in Atlanta.
Good afternoon, y'all, and thank you. And thank you for having me today. And I'm so happy to be here at an event held. We are co-sponsoring with the great Sasakawa USA. This is a great non-profit organization. In fact, I knew about this event from last year. I was attending a South Japan meeting in Greenville, South Carolina. I had the opportunity to talk with Ambassador Zumwalt, whom I have known since my previous years in Tokyo. I was at that time in the Imperial household, and Ambassador Zumwalt was the Deputy Chief of Mission of the U.S. Embassy, attending several ceremonies and functions in the Imperial Palace. So, and on that occasion, I would like to say to Deputy Assistant Secretary Julie Chung and Ambassador Zumwalt. Welcome to Atlanta. Welcome to our great city. It was in 2017 that our two leaders decided to launch the U.S.-Japan Economic Dialogue to promote and develop our economic relations. So one of the agenda was sectoral cooperation, and among them was inclusive workforce participation. So I believe that today's event was held thanks to this initiative. About the relations between our two countries, Assistant Secretary Julie Chung has talked all I would have liked to say. So I would just say that I am confident that our bilateral relations will keep ever growing, and if we have some concerns, some slight concerns about the tariff problem, they would be at the end of the day resolved through the discussions in depth our two administrations would have, and I am confident that Julie-san would help much for that. So I would like to speak today about the relations between Japan and Georgia. Well, maybe you know all that the Japanese companies are quite visible in this great state. According to our statistic, we have more than 600 Japanese companies, and we are happy to work with some 35,000 Georgians. Why so many Japanese companies here? We have several reasons. The first reason is Georgia is a great state, very hospitable, and very vibrant and hospitable. This is the 8th most populated state in the nation, and it has many incentives, interesting incentives to attract foreign investors. For example, I think that there are many states which offer interesting incentives to attract foreign companies, but Georgia is one of the cases where these companies, when they expand, can have additional incentives. And this is also a place with a warm weather, warm people, and southern hospitality. And the second reason is the workforce. I should say that thanks to the technical college system of Georgia, the workforce here is amazing. You have 22 technical colleges with 58 campuses. We have very interesting programs, Georgia Quick Start or German-style apprenticeship, and our companies are also taking advantage. This year, I had the opportunity to attend the Governor Deal's State of the State address in January, and one thing which impressed me was that the workforce was the only topic he mentioned individually, and the only cabinet member he recognized was Commissioner Matt Arthur. So that means something. And the third reason is the communities here in Georgia. When Japanese communities, when Japanese companies look for a place to invest, of course they are looking for a good state and a good workforce, but communities matter, especially for them. And a good community means good neighborhood, good education, good health system, and good safety. And you have all of that here in Georgia. And for this reason, we have these 600 Japanese companies here. And they continue to expand, which shows that they are thriving. Recently, two days ago, the governor issued a statement recognizing a Japanese automotive company based in Newton County, which will invest $72 million and create 100 jobs. And I don't say that this happens every single week, but this happens often in a year. And another example, today we have speakers from Kubota and Rainier Technical College. Earlier this year, Kubota generously donated $1 million to the college to provide state-of-the-art equipment. So this shows that our companies are good corporate citizens. The Japanese company is proud to be part of the effort to make Georgia greater, and we look forward to working and growing together with every other communities. And I am confident that the friendship and the partnership between Georgia will remain ever growing. Thank you, and let's enjoy the discussion today.
Thank you. Next, we'll have the CEO of Sasakawa USA, Ambassador James Zumwalt.
Well, thank you, everyone, for coming today. Kazuo has already thanked our partners in setting up this program, and I want to reiterate our thanks to those partners, but I also want to thank each of you, because I know you're very busy, you have a lot on your calendar, and the fact that you came today to hear this discussion about workforce development shows your commitment to the relationship between Georgia and Japan, so we appreciate that very much. I briefly just wanted to say a word about Sasakawa USA because many of you may not have heard from us. You should have at your table this kind of brochure, very nice picture of Mount Fuji on the front to give you the image of Japan. But perhaps there's some information about us inside. But just briefly, we're a US-based nonprofit whose goal is to promote a strong US-Japan relationship through education, through programs, and research. We have been active for many years now. We like to style ourselves as the only think tank in Washington devoted exclusively to Japan. The most important information, though, on this pamphlet is our back page, where you can see our website address, our Facebook address, and our Twitter address. And I certainly would encourage you, if you're interested in US-Japan relations or getting news about Japan, please friend us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, go to our website, and there's some good information there about Japan that I think will be of value to you. What I just wanted to briefly mention today is the reason we came to Georgia. We have this program called TAWA, the Alliance Working for America, and our goal is to take our message about the value of US-Japan relations out on the road, outside of Washington, to important cities that have strong ties. And this Atlanta is the third city we visited. We had a program last year in Houston and another program earlier this year in Portland. And we chose to come to Atlanta because of the existing strength of US-Japan relations. Amazing companies like Kubota, like YKK, like Murai are here. They've been here for decades, employing Americans, producing good products, and contributing to the local economy. But also the inverse is also true. When we talk about investment flows, investments in both directions are positive. And you have incredible Atlanta companies or Georgia companies. Coca-Cola is the largest provider of soft drinks and snack foods in Japan, one of the best-selling brands in Japan, known by all Japanese. They entered the Japanese market in 1946 and also had a long-term vision for growing their market there, doing very successful. Delta Airlines is a way a lot of Americans travel to Japan and a way a lot of Japanese come here. And then finally, the other example I'll mention is Aflac, the company, Georgia company. I'm sure many of you have heard of Aflac, but I don't know if you are aware that Aflac sells more product in Japan than they do in the United States, which is pretty remarkable since the population in the United States is 2.5 times the size. But Aflac has been incredibly successful. And again, a company with a long-term vision. They first arrived in Japan for the Osaka Expo in 1970 and decided this would be a good place to expand overseas because Aflac was interested in overseas markets. So they've been working on developing and growing their business in Japan since 1970. So the common thread, I think, for all these companies is having a vision and a long-term commitment is something that's very, very important. I think one reason, if you look at, why has Georgia been so successful in attracting Japanese investment, in helping Georgia firms gain a foothold in the Japanese market? And there are many reasons for that. I think Shinozuka-san mentioned several, but I would mention two other ones. One of the huge assets that Georgia has is the incredible logistical capabilities with a tremendous airport in Atlanta with direct flights to Japan. That makes a huge difference for potential investors. A wonderful deepwater port at Savannah, which makes it very convenient to get goods in and out. And this isn't in Georgia, but it makes a big difference. The expansion of the Panama Canal has actually lowered shipping costs quite dramatically dramatically because larger ships can go through the canal now. And that's opened up a lot of opportunities for companies in the Gulf Coast and the East Coast of the United States to link not only to Japan but to the rest of Asia. So that's one particular advantage that I think companies have. But to be honest, I think the other thing that's very important are the network of people-to-people ties between Georgia leaders, elected officials and business, and Japanese counterparts. The story of YKK, as you probably know, they were one of the first Japanese investors to come to Japan. And one reason they made that choice was the founder of YKK in Japan was friends with Governor Jimmy Carter. He made several visits to Japan, talked to Japanese companies, talked about why Georgia was a good place to invest. And YKK had a lot of options, a lot of places they could go to, but they chose to come here partly because of the relationship, the comfort that they had, that when they came here, they had friends in the government who could help them out. And through those kind of pioneering investments, of course, many others followed. Georgia was one of the first states in the United States to open a state office in Tokyo, whose main role is to attract Japanese companies to come. And Japanese companies notice this. They notice when a state's making efforts. They know if they have questions, there's a place they can go to find out more about answer the questions they have in Georgia. But then also, Georgia has been one of the mainstays of the Southeast U.S. Japan Association, which has been going for 42 years. It's a group of 7 southern states and mainly organized by state governments and economic development agencies in those states and Japanese business. So every other year they meet in Japan, and the odd years they meet here in the United States. So this year there'll be a meeting in Tokyo, and next year Georgia will be the host, and the meeting will be in Savannah. I hope many of you will come to that because it's a great place to network, to meet with Japanese companies. And Japanese businesses kind of interested in pursuing opportunities in the United States go to this meeting to sort of make connections. When I talk with Japanese companies and ask them, why are they coming to the United States, one other reason they mention is, the U.S. economy is strong, the U.S. is growing, and we see opportunities to make money here. That's why we want to come here. And so obviously one other aspect of U.S.-Japan relations that's so important is, from the American perspective, sustaining our solid economy is something that's going to continue attracting foreigners, including Japanese, to that market. So I'm very optimistic about the future of Georgia-Japan relations. I think the fundamental reasons underlying the ones that the Consul General mentioned and the couple that I've mentioned, I think will continue to attract Japanese business to the United States, continue to encourage Georgia companies to go and explore opportunities in Japan. So I'm very eager today to learn more about how Japanese companies and the technical college system in Georgia are working together to develop the workforce for the future, because that is a challenge for American and Japanese companies, is finding employees with the skills needed in the modern workforce. So without further ado, I'm very interested in hearing our panel discussion, but I again wanted to thank you all for coming here today. Thank you very much.
I'd like now to invite the panelists to the stage. Our moderator is Dr. Jim Hoadley, Associate Director of GT CIBER. Jim, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
For the recording. Okay. Thank you all for coming today. I see many faces that I know, many faces that I'm very happy to see, haven't seen for a while. I know that you don't want to hear me talk. I'm just the moderator to make sure that things stay on time. So for that purpose, I'm going to move directly to introducing our speakers for today. First, immediately to my right is Dr. Ray Perrin. He is president of Lanier Technical College. He previously served as president of Wiregrass Georgia Technical College in Valdosta, as assistant commissioner for technical education of the Technical College System of Georgia, and as president of the East Central Technical College in Fitzgerald. Under his stewardship, both Lanier Tech and Wiregrass Tech were recognized as Georgia's Technical Colleges of the Year. He was a member of Governor Deal's Higher Education Funding Commission and serves on the Board of Trustees of the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. Next to him is Phil Sutton. Phil is Vice President and Chief Administrative Officer for Kubota Manufacturing of America in Gainesville, and also Kubota Industrial Equipment Corporation in Jefferson. And based on what it says in your bio, you do practically everything there. You can read in your program. Phil is an active member of the Greater Hall Chamber of Commerce, and Governor Deal appointed Phil to the State Board of the Technical College System of Georgia, and recently he was appointed to serve on the Workforce Development Board for the state of Georgia. And finally, Mike Phillips is the Senior Director for Global Talent Acquisition at INCOM. In his current role, he is responsible for branding, people, process, and systems used to acquire talent resources in INCOM's rapidly growing financial technology business. On average, Mike and his team deliver over 1,000 new hires to INCOM annually, so if you're looking for a job, talk to Mike. And are responsible for continued development of the Total Talent Acquisition Program at INCOM, which has operations in over 30 countries, including Japan. So I will hand the microphone over to Dr. Perrin, and we'll get started.
Good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank Sasakawa for this wonderful invitation to come here today, and certainly want to thank the Consul General for his hospitality, and we also want to thank the State Department for their presence here today. It's an honor for me to speak on behalf of the state of Georgia. I'm a native Georgian, but I will say that the Consul General can say y'all as good as I can, so I want to compliment you on that. But I am a native Georgian, 7th generation Georgian. It's just so thrilling to me to see the progress that our state has made, particularly in the last couple of decades. As the rest of the nation experienced the downturn in the 10 years ago, Georgia did as well. But Georgia recovered very well from the downturn, and a lot of that is due to the strong leadership that the state has, particularly the leadership coming from Governor Deal and his administration. Governor Deal took office in January of 2011, and one of the first things he did was he went around the state and he talked to business leaders to find out exactly what it is that they needed in terms of workforce development. How could the state government tie in with the business community to assure that the workforce is there that can make Georgia strong and pull Georgia out of the recession? And through that initiative, the governor's office created the High Demand Initiative, which allowed the state to put resources into areas where there was a great need for workforce development. As a result, Georgia today has very strong employment. The unemployment rate in Georgia is about 3.8%. Some areas of Georgia, the unemployment is about 2.5%. So we have come out of the recession very, very strongly. As part of the High Demand Initiative, the governor's office and the state legislature have funded 17 different programs in our state's technical colleges that if those programs are considered to be so strong to the economic development and workforce development of our state that an individual who enters those programs can basically have their tuition covered by the state. And these are programs such as welding, nursing, transportation logistics, precision manufacturing, people entering the film industry, so many different areas, varied areas within our economy that the state provides incentives for students to enter into those programs in our state's technical colleges. As the Consul General mentioned, there are 22 technical colleges across the state. There's a campus within 50 miles of any individual living in the state of Georgia, so we're very easily accessed. Our mission is workforce development. We exist specifically for the reason to provide a workforce that Georgia can use to continue to thrive economically. For the 5th consecutive year, Georgia's been recognized as the #1 place in the nation in which to do business. And again, a lot of that's due to the strong leadership of Governor Deal. Our economic growth has been across all economic sectors. It's not just agriculture, which is our leading industry, by the way. It's not just the healthcare industry. It's not just manufacturing. It's not just hospitality and tourism. It's all of these and many, many more. So all of Georgia's sectors have experienced tremendous growth and tremendous success over the past 8 years. We're very fortunate to have a strong Japanese presence in Georgia. As president of Lanier Technical College, one of the first people I met when I came to Lanier Tech 5 years ago was Phil Sutton of Kubota there in Gainesville. And Kubota had a strong relationship with Lanier Tech long before I arrived, so I can't take credit for that. But I will say that that relationship has continued to prosper and thrive over these past 5 years. As the Consul General mentioned in his remarks, Kubota recently gifted Lanier Technical College Foundation $1 million for the specific purpose of assuring that we've got the equipment that we need to develop the workforce that not just Kubota, but the entire region needs to continue to thrive. So we're very, very appreciative of that relationship. And I can say that all 22 of the technical colleges in Georgia enjoy that same sort of relationship. Now, all 22 of them have not been the recipient of a $1 million gift from their Japanese industry partners, but certainly they're the recipient of strong support in terms of providing materials, providing incentives, providing advice on how to continue to develop our programs to ensure that our programs meet the needs. One of the things I was asked to speak on today also is how does the workforce development training of the Japanese differ from that of our German partners? And certainly we have a lot of German partners in Georgia as well. And I think that the best way to describe that is this theory of Kaizen, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. But it focuses on continuous improvement, not just people, but processes. And it focuses on how we can all be better at what we do, how we can be better as humans, how we can be better as employees, and how our processes can be different. The German model, which certainly is also very effective, focuses on apprenticeships and on creating master craftsmen, if you will. And certainly the Japanese model does the same, but there's when you look at continuous improvement, there's no end to you getting better. There's no end goal. There's no stopping point of saying, okay, I've mastered this, now I can just do this job for the rest of my career. But rather, the Japanese model encourages us all to continue to get better at what we do, and you can see the results by the great productivity that Japanese firms have had. And as a result, many American firms have also adopted these same principles and have thrived. Personally, I've enjoyed Japanese-American relationships since the first time I saw, at that time it was a Datsun 240Z in the early 1970s. You know, those vehicles just thrilled me as a teenager, and I've been thrilled with the Japanese vehicles ever since. Georgia's economy is strong, and we're strong largely due to the many business partnerships that we enjoy, and of course among those is the great partnerships that we enjoy with our Japanese partners.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm very, very pleased to be here today. This is really exciting to me to be a part of this, and as I've watched over the last 15 years that I've been with Kubota, that we have grown basically double in size since 2004. And a lot of people look around, and workforce development is always a question on their mind, and how do you grow that rapidly and be able to sustain that in this rapidly growing environment. And you know, we've done it in a lot of ways, but from the time that Kubota first started here in Georgia 30 years ago, we're very proud that we've never laid off a single full-time employee in 30 years. And so we have committed to the people of Georgia to be here and be a part of this family. And the folks that recruited Kubota here didn't just stop with recruiting Kubota here, they also followed up with existing industry support and helped us to continue to grow, which we wouldn't have been able to do without a lot of help from partners like Lanier Tech, and especially with the high schools and with the elected officials and the folks in the state of Georgia have really provided a big support. Several years ago, the Commissioner of Economic Development, I was at a meeting with him, and he said, "What keeps you awake at night?" And I said, number one issue is manpower. And very shortly, fast forward after that, Governor Deal appointed me to be on the technical college board at the state level. And he said, we'll do something about it. And so the this has been a great opportunity for me and to be not only an employer, but to also be part of the system that's designed for workforce development. And so I've been really amazed at the outpouring of support and the outpouring of initiative from all aspects of employers and the government agencies and everyone that we've dealt with along the way. And so about 4 years ago, we invested about $220 million and created a new factory, and we continued to expand and added another almost 600 additional jobs because we felt that we knew from our experience that Georgia was committed to providing this workforce. So along the way, one of the things that we've also done, besides partnering with the technical colleges, we've also partnered with the high schools and partnered with the colleges. Since in the last 10 years, we've hired 70 engineers, mostly from Georgia Tech and UGA and Kennesaw State through internship programs. And we have, every year, we have between 15 and 16 college interns. Every year, we have 30 high school students that are in dual enrollment programs and work-based learning programs. And we have a never-ending source of workforce, but we have to go out there and we work with the community and we develop that workforce as part of the community, not just trying to recruit and to, as we say in the business, trying to steal people from other employers by paying them an extra dime. But that's not the way we've done it. We've tried to, Kubota is about being part of the society and being part of the fabric of the communities that we live, so we have to invest in that. And the way we do that is we're investing in these young folks and we're investing in these institutions like Lanier Technical College and the other technical colleges, the other 21 technical colleges in Georgia. And we feel like that even Dr. Perrin talked about offering everything from A to W, from accounting to welding. Well, and I shared with some of our colleagues earlier today that we use all of those. Even though we don't hire them, employing 2,700 people, we use all of those services, from healthcare to accounting to cosmetology, you name it, to auto repair. So it's really important that we invest in all of these things to support that 2,700 and growing workforce. So we're very pleased to be a part of the community that we live in. We're invested in the community that we live in, and we're really looking forward to continuing to do that in the future. As Dr. Perrin mentioned, we invested, and we don't consider that a gift. That was an investment in the future of Georgia and the future of our community to contribute that $1 million to the new technical college. And we're looking forward to a long-term relationship as we continue to grow there. So thank you all for inviting me today.
Hi, so my name is Mike Phillips. I'm the Senior Director over Talent Acquisition for INCOM globally. And I second everybody else when I just say thanks to Sasakawa, the Alliance, for working in America, for having me today to represent INCOM. INCOM actually operates in the financial technology space. If you've ever used a gift card, you've actually probably worked with INCOM. We do a lot more than that, but that's usually a pretty relevant way to think about us. We actually started in an Atlanta basement 25 years ago, and we actually have grown from that time to an organization of several thousand employees across about 30 countries to date. Although we're a global company, we have over a third of our employees here in the state of Georgia, and we've really made a significant investment in employees and people here in this state. Given the complexities that exist within the financial technology sector, as well as the need for ongoing innovation in our business, it's mission critical for INCOM to maintain a highly skilled, highly diverse workforce. Diversity is actually one of our core values, and again is mission critical given the industry that we operate in. For that reason, we're happy we've made the investments that we have here in the state of Georgia. Georgia's workforce is highly skilled, it's highly diverse, and it's very rich with regard to talent that exists here. That being said, I think there's a very real need to continue to educate more technical workers and really more diversity within the technical space. From developers, systems engineers, process expertise, INCOM leverages all of this, but technology is changing it's changing all businesses, and the need for these skills is only going to increase, and I don't think that's unique to INCOM or unique to Georgia or Japan. I think that that's everywhere. So for us, when it comes to recruiting and training, the workforce that we need, we really look for first to talent acquisition. We feel like we have to acquire the talent we need, and then from there train and grow that talent based on what is relevant to our business. So we try to take our opportunity, our story of opportunity, to really diverse marketplaces. And historically, that's been pretty difficult to do. You had to identify each individual diversity market you wanted to be in. You had to go and post jobs there. You had to go and speak, do things like that. Now, with the click of a button, you can literally be in hundreds of marketplaces in an instant. So it's really changed the game. But advertising in that diverse marketplace is really only half of the battle. We find that in a large organization, you really have to change behavior and mindset so that diversity is paramount across hiring managers, across leadership. And a lot of that has to do with the removal of bias. And there's some exciting technologies around AI, machine learning that can help folks like myself really identify areas where that bias might exist. And I'm not really referring to like blatant racial bias or gender bias or anything like that. I'm talking about very granular, bias that exists because we're organizations of people. And so it can help you shine a spotlight on where that might exist so you can take action to train, to educate, to coach your leaders and managers to ensure that you're doing everything you can to remove that, to then build that diverse workforce. So once we've acquired the diversity, we aggressively develop our people, and we try to do that in ways that are very relevant to our business. We try to keep that tied tightly together. And so this includes development around technology, process, leadership, and so on. And at INCOM, we strive to kind of create a robust platform for development. So these are things like INCOM University, our learning management system, Leadership Academy that we've put together and is specific to INCOM. Once we've stood that platform up, we want to charge our employees with owning their development. We don't want to be in the business of forcing or dragging people to develop. What we want to do is create a compelling message around the opportunity to get better at INCOM. And we want to ultimately sell that back to our employee population and put the onus on them. But I think a big part of that is having a tangible reward at the end of that. And that's why I said we try to keep that tied tightly together to what's relevant for our business. If people work hard to develop themselves and they get better, and there's an underlying reward for the business, or the business gets better because of it, there should be a reward for that individual, or a tangible outcome for that individual. So we want to package that message up, sell that back to our employees, and again, put the onus on them with us owning the development opportunities, the platform for development. I mentioned we're heavily invested here in the state of Georgia, but we are a global company with roughly 30 different markets around the world. One of our largest international offices is in Tokyo, Japan. Just like here in the U.S., we've made heavy investments in our people in Tokyo. That said, there's some very real differences regarding how we go about both acquiring and developing our talent in Japan. One of the fundamental differences, I think, is longevity with an employer. The loyalty to an employer. Here in the United States, it's not uncommon to hire somebody 2 or 3 years later, they jump on LinkedIn or Indeed, and here they go off somewhere else, and 2 or 3 years later, they do the same thing again. That's pretty normal here in the United States. That is not the norm in Japan. And so we have to fundamentally change our processes. I have worked literally for years at INCOM to understand the work culture in Japan that drives some of the differences that we see. So we basically recreated a new process in Japan that kind of lines up with the expectations from a social standpoint and a work standpoint. But there are very real differences between the two. Where there's not a difference is our need for diversity and technical expertise. That exists in all markets that we're in, and like I said, that's changing all business. It's not unique to INCOM, it's not unique to any one market, it's just the direction that things are going. So I think we have to work hard in Japan, just like we are here, to create a set of employees or an employee base, an employee market that is technically skilled and that has inherent diversity within that technical expertise within the marketplace. At the end of the day, though, we have to stay ahead of the curve with regard to our partnerships with organizations like Sasakawa, the Alliance for Working in America, and other groups that have really diversity as a major focal point. We have to continue to harness the technologies that are changing the recruiting, talent acquisition space, the workforce development space, to continue to be ahead of the curve in the way that we actually go about achieving the goal of having a skilled, capable, diverse workforce to continue to grow INCOM's business. So, you know, this is a great exercise in discussion, especially for someone like myself and for a company like INCOM. We are heavily invested in, and it's crucial for us to be able to leverage the employee marketplaces here in Georgia and all the markets that we operate in to continue to further our business. So thank you guys very much for having me, and look forward to answering your questions here shortly. So thank you.
Okay, I believe we have folks going around with microphones because as we are recording. So do we have any immediate questions from the audience? Okay. If not, I'll just get it kicked off. I'll ask Phil, what exactly, well, not exactly, but what has allowed you to never lay off an employee? Is that somehow inherently connected to the fact that Kubota is a Japanese company?
Yeah, I think it's a cultural thing, and I think it's a commitment that comes from our roots in Japan, being a 130-year-old company. That there's really a dedication. One of our key principles is that the prosperity of our company depends upon the development of our team members, and we really believe that. And that's how we live, and even in the most difficult times in 2009, in the lowest part of the recession, we still didn't lay anyone off, and everyone got a paycheck, and everyone continued with their health care, and everyone even got a small bonus that year. So it's really that commitment that comes from our roots in Osaka and Japan, that we are committed to our team members, and we're committed to our community.
Questions? No. Okay. You don't want to listen to me asking questions all day long, so think of your own, please. All right. I have a question for Dr. Perrin. How exactly, this one's kind of a meaty one, I think. How do corporations start the process of partnering with the technical college system in order to meet their requirements?
All 22 technical colleges are heavily involved with the communities in which we serve, whether it's industry, healthcare, government. We meet at least 2 times a year with what we call industry advisory councils, where we bring together all of our people who employ our graduates, and we listen to them. They review our curriculum, they walk through our labs, they take a look at our equipment, they tell us about the progress of our graduates in the workforce, they tell us about trends that they see on the horizon coming into the future. So because of that strong relationship that all 22 colleges in our system enjoy with our business community, we can keep our curriculum relevant, we can keep it fresh, we can guarantee our graduates, and that's something I also want to mention, that all 22 of our colleges, technical colleges, we guarantee our graduates. If you hire one of our graduates and they don't have the skill set that you think they should have had after you employed them, we will retrain them at no cost to the employee or to the business. So our graduates are guaranteed, and we can do that because of the strong relationship that we have up front with our business community.
Could I add to that?
Please.
A little kudos for Dr. Perrin. When they were getting ready a few years ago to start this new campus, which is the first completely new campus of a technical college in Georgia, they came to industry. They called us one by one, and they showed us what their plans were, and they said, how can we make this better? What can we do to serve your business? And even down to what kind of machine should we buy? So that's the kind of partnership that these presidents of these 22 technical colleges provide to the the employers. And it's really been very key. So I think it's an important part to add to that question.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh.
So thank you for a very broad and sort of balanced and integrated panel. There's a lot here. One question that the two, Mr. Phillips and Mr. Sutton, basically saying you brought a Japanese style kind of workforce management to the Georgia, you start in Georgia and you go to Japan. Is there anything you've learned from adapting in Japan that you've brought back to Georgia in terms of workforce development and work relations? And then for the whole panel, okay, we're going to have a new governor, in January. given all the things that we already have in Georgia to sort of encourage workforce development, but given how critical it is, if the three of you all get invited to the governor's mansion after the inauguration, what next thing would we add to the suite that would be most beneficial for Georgia?
So to your first question, I think in Japan we've learned that we have to start the process much earlier than we do in the United States. I mean, obviously we're in a lot of colleges here, but in Japan, sometimes it starts much earlier than that. With branding, your employer brand, building relationships with the talent, training, coaching, and just starting that relationship. I think we've brought that here and tried to kind of get ahead of the curve here in the United States and say, well, look, I mean, if it works there and we can go ahead and get in some of these schools, even be at high schools, and start to create that brand, it may not be that we hire somebody right when they graduate college, but that brand sticks in someone's mind. And we might be able to leverage that down the road, even if it's years into the future, the same way we do the brand building in college here. So I think the main thing we've learned is just kind of taken from how early the process really starts in Japan, with employers starting to build relationships with potential employees. So that, hopefully that answers your question. But, and then second question again?
What do we need next when we get a new governor in terms of workforce development program?
I mean, so I'm a Georgia Bulldog, and I'll evoke my inner Kirby Smart here. I think, just like Kirby's done in football recruiting, the talent's here. I think we got to keep the talent here, and that happens by bringing more businesses here, creating more opportunity, more reason to stay. Our academic partners have done a great job educating a very talented workforce. I mean, like I mentioned, there's a gap in technology, but that exists everywhere. So working on bridging that, but I think emphasizing continuing to have companies move to the state of Georgia, the companies that are here continuing to create really this robust environment where companies know they can come and grow, and there's a workforce to be leveraged, where that when you try to execute on initiatives, you're going to be able to find the people you need to do it. And I can speak for Incom. When we hire here in the state of Georgia, we very, very rarely have to go outside to bring people here. The talent really does exist here, and at least close enough to where we can get somebody that's, even in the high, very high-end tech jobs, somebody that's 80 or 85% there, we can train them the rest of the way. But I think it's about continuing to bring robust opportunity here so people have a reason to stay. When the students get done with their education, they're not looking to go to Silicon Valley, or they're not looking to go, to some of these other markets. They know that Georgia's got everything that any of these other markets has, and I can tell you from experience recruiting in all the markets we do, Georgia absolutely does. So I think it's doing more of the same.
So to your first question, Kubota is very much a Japanese-American company, and today we recruit about 100 new Japanese college graduates a year that we bring on board in Japan. The largest market for Kubota is North America. About 70% of our sales are here in North America. So every one of those 100 college graduates comes to the United States for at least a month, and they live with an American family, and they learn English. They come and visit our factories, and they learn about our business. And we share that kind of information. And we have, of course, when I first started, we had twice as many expats as we have, but now we're in 110 countries, so we're spread a little bit thin, but we have 30 to 40 expats that take good ideas from here and go back to Japan too. And so it's a continuous sharing of information. So I think we've become a symbiotic company that truly is not Japanese and not American, but it's Kubota. It's very unique. And to your second question, I would just say my concern is probably the same concern Ray has, that we know about 65% of our high school graduates or students who enter high school don't go to college. And we know that, so they go from high school to wandering around somewhere. And then when they get to Ray, their average age is about 27 in the technical college system. So almost 10 years they're out in the workforce. I think we need to narrow that gap. And we're working very hard. I think the technical college system is working very hard to do that with their partnerships with the high schools. But I think that we can do more in that area to try to close that gap of that 7 years of them wandering around not knowing what they're going to do, and to try to introduce them to industry. And the other piece of that is we got to figure out how to slow down this 2-year hopping and jumping from job to job to job, which is very alien to the Japanese environment. I still talk to folks today that they're like, why would anybody have 5 different jobs in 20 years? So we've got to educate our folks a little bit better here to be a little more patient and to try to narrow that gap.
I have a follow-on question to that, and it is related to a current issue, and I'll have to say that I am speaking for myself asking this question. This is not an official Georgia Tech opinion. In the United States, the school year is about 180 days, roughly. In Japan, the school year is roughly 220 days. The state legislature right now is talking about moving the start of the school year back to after Labor Day, which to me implies that they're looking at shortening the school year further, perhaps. I don't know the details. No? Okay, it's going to be the same length, but it will end much later. It will end later. Okay. Regardless, still we have the difference between 220 and 180. Does that account for some of the difference between how prepared Japanese Japanese employee candidates are versus how American candidates are when they enter the workforce?
I mean, I think shortening the school year, even though it's technically not going to get shorter, I think that's a bad idea. I think it's about inspiring the students with some of the stuff we've discussed. You know, first of all, what's possible, but with the rate at which technology is disrupting every industry, there's so much opportunity, you know, if I'm sitting in high school or just starting college, to really dictate and almost write my own ticket if I take the right path. And so I think the onus is on businesses, like I was saying earlier, to kind of start earlier to ensure that the most is gained out of the time you spend in school, that it's not just time to go party and hang out and build social relationships. I mean, I think, unfortunately, in the U.S., there's 50% or more of the students there are just there because that's kind of what the next step was. It's not really attacking any specific goal other than just hopefully I graduate and then I'll figure it out from there. I mean, quite honestly, I spend a lot of time with our university partners, and that seems to be kind of the mentality of at least half of the students. So I think there's an onus on the business, the leadership within our academic environments to really compel students through this selling of opportunity, through the communication of what's possible in the world today. And it's not like you got to go be the best engineer there ever was. It just, you need to have some kind of focus and strategy for what you're doing and really make the most of the education opportunity while you're there. Because once it's over, like they've mentioned, we see the gap. It's not till you get a little bit older, a little more mature, when you say, whoa, I kind of missed the boat. I need to go back and rethink this whole thing. So I think there's a lot of stakeholders in this that could probably up the urgency around creating this compelling message for what you're doing while you're there in your school time. So
I think one of the important aspects of school is to encourage young people to explore and to discover aspects of the work world that they don't even know exist. And what I'm trying to say here is, back when I was growing up, I came from a rural area, so we tinkered with stuff. We would take a car engine apart and put it back together, and we kind of understood how those things work. So many of today's young people don't have that opportunity. They don't get to put their hands in things. They don't know what their passions are because they've never been exposed to so many things. So I think that one of the important things is, regardless of how long the school year is to give our young people an opportunity to really explore areas that they may not be exposed to in their home environment. And our teachers work very hard to educate our children. I believe that today's young people is the brightest generation this country's ever raised, regardless of what test scores may show. My 4-year-old granddaughter has been exposed to more computer technology in her first 4 years of life than I was in my first 40 years of life. So there's so many aspects that these young people are exposed to, but and the technology is wonderful, but also continue to expose them to areas that they may not get otherwise. Provide opportunities in schools for students to tinker and use their creativity to develop things.
I would like to add also on the dual enrollment program, that tells me there's so many more kids, and I don't know what the number is, Ray. The number of kids that are involved in dual enrollment and the number of kids that are graduating high school and getting a 2-year diploma at the same time in the state of Georgia is unbelievable. So that tells me that they have more capacity. There's a lot of kids out there that have a lot more capacity to do more than 180 days of school. And I think this has been a good solution to that, this dual enrollment, and it's growing every year, the statistics are telling us.
And if I could add to that, there are about 25,000 students enrolled in dual enrollment programs in our state now, and that's up significantly from where it was a few years ago. But statistically, 98% of students who are involved in dual enrollment will graduate from high school, compared to maybe the 70% of the general population. So these students are excelling, they're learning, and they're graduating, and they're prepared for college or career.
Mike, you mentioned. Yes, thank you. Mike, quick question to you. In your work sourcing talent outside the borders of the U.S., do you actually import talent here? And the second part is, perhaps, if they say in politics, perception is reality. So, how does the current flux in immigration policy impact your ability to source talent and import them here?
Sure. I would say 20% or so of our workforce is sponsorship candidates that are here, whether we imported them or not. They're here and they require sponsorship. Yes, the change in legislation has impacted us. It's a huge challenge for any company that has any sponsorship workers that is not from in country. We don't really know exactly how to solve it, and quite frankly, I don't know how versed everybody is with what's happened over the last few months, but the legislation has been changing almost week to week with new just pieces of it being rolled out and changes, and it's created kind of havoc within the workers themselves with so much uncertainty, but also for folks that are trying to manage the acquisition of the workforce and just providing the workforce to the business. How are we going to do it? I mean, because there is, the way we bridge that gap in technology I was talking about earlier, a lot of times is through that importing of talent that exists in other markets. So it's the uncertainty that's caused by this constant change, and no one really knows. What we do know is if the job is high-end technology enough, you're probably safe. But there's this huge gray area. At what point is it a specialized skill, and there's no dictionary for that? I mean, there's no guidebook for that. And again, it's changing almost weekly, at least here in the last few months. It really, from a people perspective, folks have come here, they've invested here, their work, their families, and it has been hugely disruptive and, quite frankly, a little bit unfortunate for a lot of folks that are here. But again, a huge challenge, not just to our business. I mean, I spend a lot of time talking with peers of mine, trying to uncover what's a solution, what can we do? And everybody kind of has their hands thrown up right now with a lot of uncertainty until there's a more stable climate and a more stable way forward. There's just not a good solution, but yeah, it's been hugely disruptive.
Could I ask another follow-on question? The way that the Japanese educational system works, in high school, basically K through 9 is guaranteed for everyone, and then high school is available in most prefectures, but the high school, there's an entrance examination to get into high school, and they tend to divide students up starting at the 10th grade into different tracks. So there are academic high schools, there are agricultural high schools, there are machinery high schools where they learn to be mechanics and these sorts of things. Now, I'm certain that the U.S., the state of Georgia, cannot exactly replicate that model, but are we working too hard to track everyone for a 4-year college when we should be dividing people up maybe a little bit earlier on and getting them into where they need to be.
Yeah, I would agree with your point, and not everybody's cut out for a 4-year liberal arts degree, and they don't need to be. And I really think this is dual enrollment with the technical college really helps open some eyes, and I think the long term, we don't know the long-term effect of this yet, but I think it's going to be very positive. And the idea, and let me just share a little bit, we do this work-based learning, and I'll just talk about Northeast Georgia. There are 800 children, high school students, involved in work-based learning. Those are 11th and 12th graders that are going to school for a couple of hours, then they go to work for 4 to 6 hours a day. And out of the 800 in my area, only 2% of those 800 kids are engaged in manufacturing-related jobs. But 30% of the jobs available when they graduate are manufacturing-related jobs. So somehow we have to change some minds in that area. The kids are there, they're engaged, but they don't know what they don't know. So somehow we have to balance that statistic too. 2% of the kids engaged in that work-based learning are not, they're doing what they want to do, or they're finding out what they don't want to do. But at the end of the day, we still have 98% of the kids that that may be in the wrong path in work-based learning. They may be working at the hospital, or they may be working at an insurance company, or they may be working in an area where there are only 2% of the jobs. So we need to make sure that we try to get some congruency there and some balance.
I think another issue is there's this idea of the American dream is that you get a 4-year college degree, you have a job, you own your own home, and so forth. You don't have to have a 4-year degree to be successful. And somehow we've got to get into the American mindset that it's not necessary to have a 4-year degree. Do we need 4-year degrees? Absolutely. Probably everyone in this room has at least that. But does everyone have to have it to be successful? No. Probably 60 to 70% of the jobs in this country require some training beyond high school, but they don't necessarily require a 4-year college degree. But somewhere in our mind, we've got this idea that if my child goes to a technical college, then they're somehow less than someone that goes to a 4-year college. And that's just not true. So we've got to break that mindset and really honor people for going into a very noble profession, whatever that profession may be. If it's Thanksgiving Day and you want a plumber, you need a plumber, you're going to pay $150 or whatever to get that plumber there. And many physicians call plumbers on Thanksgiving Day, if that makes any sense. So, but there are people who have passions to go in those areas. We should encourage that and not discourage it or think that you're not going to be successful if you don't get that 4-year degree from Georgia, which go Dogs too. But we don't want people to feel like they're less than because they went to a technical college. One of the things that we're trying to do with our new campus that's under construction now that will open in January is this is just a beautiful facility. We want it to be a showcase for technical education. We want people across the state, people across the nation to see what technical education can be, that we're not less than just because we're a 2-year institution.
I think first I have to put a kibosh on no more of the things that you just said. Remember where you are. So no more Go Dogs. I'll get in trouble for that. I believe I think I saw a hand up. No? Did someone have a? Yes.
Hi. So I'm in my limited experience dealing with Japanese high school students, college students, as well as business professionals. One of the largest challenges that we've faced is communicating through the cultural and language barriers. Culturally, there are a lot of differences, like the very top-down hierarchy and formality of business proceedings, and also from a language point of view, Japanese language isn't taught in U.S. schools, and many Japanese people's English, especially when they're younger, is very limited. So what are some of the ways that you've encountered these challenges, and how have you combated them?
That's a very good question. As I mentioned, Kubota has started a program a few years ago where every college graduate that we hire comes to the United States and trains in English. And they also come to the factory and they learn as well. But we also have programs, and I'll just talk about the Japan American Society is a great resource here in Georgia for us. And the events, the other events, cultural events like Japan Fest that's held every year. And some of those things are very, very useful to companies like Kubota to engage those folks and to have those cultural exchanges. We also, we're getting ready to send about 25 people to Japan, young professionals and supervisors within the company to get them an opportunity to visit Japan and to go to Kyoto and to experience the Japanese culture a little bit and to interact with their counterparts within our Japanese factories and offices. So I think it's something that you have to work on and you have to be a part of, whether it's in the community with the chambers of commerce or with exchange programs, or with we've also partnered with some of the universities from Japan have come over here and met with us, and so you have to constantly be engaged in that cultural exchange, and I think if you do that and you're really a part of that, I think that really helps to break down a lot of those barriers and it improves our relationships. It makes us feel good about ourselves.
Hi, I actually have a question about something that Ambassador Zumwalt said. I don't know if that's appropriate to ask him, but maybe the panel has a comment on it too. And it concerns your fact about AFLAC having more business in Japan than in the United States. And I've seen AFLAC representatives at a lot of these functions, and I've heard that before. Is the product that they sell there the same as what they sell here? Because here, I think of it as being, and I actually have one of these policies, this emergency income if you're injured or something like that, and it never seems to fit in with what I think the culture is in Japan, where, as you say, the companies kind of take care of their employees more for a lifetime. So that was my question. What type of product does AFLAC sell there, and why is it necessary in that type of culture?
No, thank you. Good question. And I'm not here representing AFLAC, by the way. I just have learned a lot about their business because I lived in Japan a long time. But the story I heard was that the founder of AFLAC visited Japan as a tourist in 1970 at the Osaka Expo, and he was struck by how many people in Japan walked around with masks on because they had a cold. So what he thought about that as someone who sells health insurance is, gee, this is a population that cares about health. And for him, as a businessman, that was kind of an attractive aspect of Japan. So he thought, let's see what kind of product we could sell in Japan. So they did a lot of research, and it was a very competitive market in Japan, but one of the products AFLAC had, and what they started with in Japan, was cancer insurance. So if you developed cancer, you would get, I don't know exactly the details, and since no one else sold that product, he got permission from the finance minister to begin selling that product. Now, since then, they've expanded and do a lot of other things as well. One thing I would say about AFLAC as well, they have a lot of partners. Many people who purchase AFLAC policies do so from the human resources departments of their companies. So when you're signing in and signing up for all the things, you just sign up for AFLAC insurance, and part of your pay gets deducted for this policy. The post office in Japan now sells AFLAC products because the post office has a postal bank and a postal insurance company. So you can go to the post office in Japan, visit the insurance part, and buy an AFLAC policy there. So they've been creative. So I'm not the expert. I am sure they don't sell exactly the same products as they do here. They've adapted to the market. They have thousands of employees in Japan. But the beginning really was a creative person who went there and thought, gee, this is a big and population that cares about health, and I sell health insurance, so I can probably find a way of making some money here. So it really is quite a success story. And by the way, you're probably all familiar with the AFLAC duck, which is kind of, the duck exists in Japan, but the personality of the duck is much less obnoxious in Japan.
Hello. My question is actually about kind of the older people who are in the workforce. So there are a number of people kind of as the workforce changes and the job market changes, people who are kind of getting into what I would call maybe second careers. And I'd be curious kind of the degree to which the technical college programs are open to that and the companies as well.
Traditionally, the average age of our student has been in their upper 20s, 28, 29, 30. Recently, as more and more dual enrollment students come into our institutions, that age has declined. Typically, the enrollment in technical colleges skyrockets when unemployment is high. So during the recession in 09, in 10 and so forth, probably 50% of our students were what you would consider to be the adult population. They were going back to retool, so when the economy was better, they were prepared to go to work. But we do have even though the number is smaller now than it was 8 years ago, we do have a significant portion of our students who are working adults. Most of the students across the technical college system are part-time because they are working in jobs somewhere else, and they're training up so they can get a promotion, maybe change jobs or whatever. But we do have a significant adult population.
And we're very open to it. We have such a need for the skills themselves that almost as long as you're not 6 months from retirement and we can have you for an amount of time, we're very open. And we offer a lot of our internal employees the opportunity to, whether it's education through income or going back to school, that's something we very actively promote. And so, we want to keep it based on skill and merit, not necessarily, what did you do before you got these skills? To us, that's not really relevant. What's relevant is what can you do today, and are you interested in the opportunity we've got at Incom? So we're not just open to it, we actively promote it from within. So
That's an interesting question because from a cultural standpoint, in Japan, they have some mandatory retirement ages within a lot of companies. So I think it's eye-opening for them to see that we have a 72-year-old welder. And they're saying, well, how long is he going to work? Well, as long as he wants to work. And so we welcome them, and I think it's a cultural difference, but they're very accepting, and from a cultural standpoint, and actually very, very welcoming the older workforce. I think a lot of companies think differently, but I think that if we overlook I think people are working longer. I know people are working longer. And so whether it's for insurance purposes or whatever, we're seeing a lot of that, and I think it's good for all of us.
As employers and technical college administrators, how do you respond to concerns from workers that technology and artificial intelligence are threats to their existence, that they'll be replaced by this machinery of the future? And what can we do with U.S.-Japan partnerships to address those concerns?
If I could, from an employer standpoint, that was one of the questions I heard from economic development folks is, if you're going to invest in this business, does that mean you're going to buy robots and replace humans? Well, that couldn't be farther from the truth. It may be a skill set shift, but the truth is we still need skilled labor workers and in various degrees. So even though we're introducing some of our robotic welding is 95% is robots, but we still need people to load them and unload them. And the robots don't know when to start without a human telling them when to start and program them. So we're teaching skill sets. What we're finding, the young gamers love the robots. And so not only can they do welding, but they can also do robot programming, from welding to painting to assembly. So I think that, yes, technology is great, but Toyota taught us a long time ago that when they invented automation to replace the loom, because Mr. Toyota saw his family members' fingers bleeding from the machines, that he said when he created the Toyota production system, and we really believe this in manufacturing today, that that machines are there to support humanity and not for humans to support machines. So, you know, and the translation I'm told for what he called that was it's respect for humanity. So the automation is respect for humanity and not to replace humanity.
And I would say that we develop our programs with this changing technology in mind. I was sharing at dinner last night that when Lanier Tech opened in the mid-1960s, we had a great TV radio repair program. But there's no demand for TV repair folks today. So those people aren't working in that industry anymore, but they're still working somewhere else. So we have to adapt our curriculum to go where these jobs are, to assure that people continue to be to receive the training to be actively employed in the workforce.
So you mentioned the kind of coding and the automation process here, and thinking, you know, 5, 10 years into the future, beyond the work-based learning programs that you have in high schools, what other investments have you all made as companies or even in the technical college realm in the K-12 space as far as coding, computer science, et cetera?
We actually sponsor, I don't know if the right word is interns or not, but we actually, in high school, have students actively working at INCOM, you know, obviously on a part-time basis, but trying to get them exposure within our IT organizations in a number of different ways. Again, that's one of the things that, to the question earlier, we're trying to kind of bring back as a lesson learned of our work in Japan is, you know, how engaged can we really get? You know, what is the appetite of a high school student in the U.S. to really engage a company at that level, to be really learning real-time skills that they might employ, you know, in college and once they get out. But yeah, it's an ongoing effort for us. And again, once we have them, it's a small set right now, but we try to give them visibility within the organization, especially within the IT organization, as that kind of lines up with most of their interest. But so that they can start to have some idea of what they want to do, what they don't want to do, but at the end of the day, begin to learn the business, learn the industry, learn the technology that exists today, how quickly that can be disrupted and changed, but to start to give that kind of perspective and experience. So we're actively involved in that today.
And related to the question on coding, the technical college system across the state, we certainly have computer information programs and so forth. Augusta Tech is partnering with Augusta University and the Department of Defense to develop and implement, as we speak, a cyber security program that's designed to again assure that there's the technicians that are needed to keep us safe from the cyber attacks that our nation and as individuals would take on. So again, as these technologies evolve, our curriculum evolves to meet those needs.
We're also sponsoring like robotic labs and robotic clubs with like 4-H and with middle schools and high schools, and engaging, you know, young folks even in middle school with those kind of programs.
Good afternoon. Does Kubota import any units, any commodities, any parts from Japan to the U.S. for your machinery and equipment?
Yes.
Do you get any components from Japan to the U.S.?
Yeah, so Kubota has its own engine and transmission factories in Japan, and we have not established those because actually Kubota sells more OEM engines to other companies than we use ourselves. So that we have not established engine manufacturing. Someday in the United States we probably will. But right now all of our engines, primarily engines and transmissions, come from our Kubota factories in Japan.
So are the new tariffs having any effect on the bottom line? Is it one way, or when they go back, does it happen again in Japan?
Yes, so the tariffs is an ongoing issue. It's a question mark. Obviously, the steel tariffs have taken place. Those caused, and this is across the board, that 25% tariff on Chinese steel and aluminum has caused the U.S. steel prices, which we only use domestic steel, to go up about 40%. So they've had an impact on us, but indirectly, but still, it's across the board, so it affects all of our competitors as well.
And to the Japanese Consul General, arigato you all for setting this up.
Well, there's a question that I was going to say for the end, but I think I'll ask the panel now. One of the things that you particularly, Phil, you talked about is the changeover that people are changing jobs in America much more frequently than they do in Japan. And one of the things that I think underlies that is the sense of community and belonging to a particular corporation in Japan, that it's a sense of a family. One of the ways that that is created in Japan through the K through 12 system is the K through 12 system acculturates people to being part of a community. And that includes things like the students, there's no janitors in Japanese schools because the kids clean up after themselves. There's no cafeteria ladies, as wonderful as they are, in Japan because the kids serve the meals to each other. Would you think that in the US, if we worked more towards having our K through 12 system to have kids be participatory in that way and build a sense of community, would that reduce the turnover of employees?
Gosh, I sure would hope so. We work on a lot of that. I mean, as a Japanese company, we do some of those things. We have family days every year. We invest very heavily in our employees. We have not raised the rates of insurance in 6 years, even though obviously insurance rates are going up. So we've taken on those responsibilities. But we have these events, and when we try to create that family environment. And so we started out in 1988 with 38 American employees and 6 Japanese expats. Today, of those 38, 6 are still there, are still working. So this is part of that cultural difference, and we're seeing more and more that as we do this, that we make them part of the Kubota family, and that's something that I've learned, that we've learned from our Japanese friends, that I think that we could all enjoy a little bit more family environment and a little more of that paternalistic approach. And I appreciate that very much. I invite many of our expats to come to my house for Thanksgiving dinner, to enjoy an American-style Thanksgiving dinner, to come out to my farm and to see the chickens and those kind of things. So, and take them fishing and take them to sporting events. And I think doing that, we learn from each other. But I've appreciated that very much from the Japanese culture.
Other questions? All right. Well, I'm getting the signal that we're at time, so we'll wrap it up. I would like to everyone to give a round of applause to our presenters. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And again, to thank Sasakawa, to thank the Consul General, to thank the State Department, to Ambassador Zumwalt, the Consul General, for being here, and thank you very, very much for coming here today. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.